Alright, before we start continuing on, I just gotta say, I went to go see Star Wars a couple days ago. Fucking awesome! Oh, God, it was so good! It was so good! Just go see it. Just go see it. I went to go see it on opening night. It was... I don't think I could talk without giving spoilers, so... Sorry. So, I'm not. But one thing I will say, furthermore, that doesn't really pertain to Star Wars, that the trailer we saw for the Jungle Book movie, Ch10 is awesome! And I know it's Ch10. You know, the giant, the snake with the mind control from the anime movie? Holy shit! She is cool, and yet, they make Ch10 a female in this. And it works really well. And just from the trailer... in the very beginning, the whole trailer, there's this woman talking. I noticed right at the start, when she starts talking, she kind of rolls her S's like a snake. So I'm like, is that Ch10? But Ch10's a guy. Like, in the book, in the original movie, Ch10 was a guy. But no, at the end we see this fucking massive anaconda. Like, this is monster level massive. This is huge. And it's Ch10. It's so cool. They made Ch10 totally awesome. Man, it really wasn't that awesome. He was alright, but he wasn't really awesome. It's cool. Anyways, let's continue with Fallout Equestria. Whew. Let me get everything set. Let's turn this down a little bit. And, Star Wars was amazing. Jungle Book looks good.
Bobby pin and screwdriver was still within my abilities. As I tried to pick the lock, I asked Velvet,
"We need a place to rest. What do you think of staying here?"
"In a raider town?"
she asked incredulously.
"Have you seen their decor? Beyond being unbelievably disgusting, it's exceptionally unhealthy. I half suspect the reason they were such easy targets for you two was that they were all impaired from disease. No offense."
I nickered and focused on the safe.
"Besides, there could be more out raiding. Do you really want to be here asleep when they come back?"
She had a good point. As tired as I was, this was a horrible place to bed down. The safe opened with a click. Looking inside, I found another stealth book and a copy of Zebra Infiltration Tactics, Know Your Enemy, as well as several badly aged documents and a number of slightly glowing magical energy grenades. A recorded message was tucked into the back. I downloaded it to my pip-buck and listened.
"I'm sending you one of the devices recovered from Shattered Hoof Ridge. Intelligence suggests that the zebras have developed invisibility spell fetishes. But this looks like something designed by the Ministry of Magic. It's even pip-buck compatible. I hate to say it, but it looks like we've got traitors in our midst. If some pony in MAS is leaking arcane technology to the zebras, the princess will need to take action."
Who the fuck is that?
No voice I recognized, but this was the third ministry I now knew by name. Third of 6. 6 heroic best friends. 6 ministries. The Ministry of Morale and the Ministry of Peace were the only others I knew anything about. Or were they? No, there was one other, although I hadn't learned its name. The orange bucking pony statuette was clearly one of the limited edition magical artifacts that Silverbell had told us about. The cutie mark of 3 apples was identical to the design on the handle of Little Macintosh. The fact that I could mentally draw a line from one of Watcher's heroines to a weapons factory guarded by pony-shaped robots with living brains in them made me cringe a little.
Yeah, that's kind of fucked up.
I got the feeling I wasn't going to like a lot of what I was bound to learn about these ministries. At least the Ministry of Peace seemed benign.
That's the one I'm most scared about.
A curving set of train tracks cut a swath through the rolling, rocky hills and intersected with our path, so we had begun to follow it. It wasn't exactly the right direction, but it was close, and I suspected the tracks would wind slowly back, probably leading all the way to Manhattan. Plus, it had the benefit of being relatively flat. Velvet began to sing.
"No more living in this gilded cage,
Finally.
shackled to what is supposed to be. I am ready to exit the stage. It is time for this bird to fly free.
I've been blinded 'cause I've closed my eyes.
Calamity stepped in. His voice was no match for Velvet Remedy's, but he carried a tune amazingly well.
Seeing just what they told me
It's
to
going to
see.
be an impromptu musical.
Time to get up and shake off the lies. Break the rules. Stretch my wings and just leave.
Wow. For the second time that morning, I fell to my haunches, mouth hanging open. Velvet Remedy and Calamity continued their song, unaware that I had stopped and was staring at them. I threw myself back to my hooves and trotted to catch up. There was a part of my spirit that was just welling with happiness, seeing my friends like this. A part of my mind was in a constant squee at hearing Velvet writing a new song. And there was an annoyingly earth pony-ish part of me that insisted these two were alerting everything in our vicinity that we were here.
Wait,
I suspected Velvet
annoyingly earth pony part of you? What does that mean? Like, I don't know how to take that because I'm not quite sure what that means. And it's right. I mean, it's correct. Whatever. That's a weird phrasing for me. I don't quite get it. I understand what it's trying to convey, but the fact they used a race for that's just weird.
Remedy didn't know any better. For having been in the wasteland several hours longer than I, she had less experience with traveling through it, and her mind seemed more inclined to other paths of thought. Calamity, on the other hoof, probably just didn't care. There weren't many threats out here that he couldn't just fly away from, and I assumed he sometimes forgot he was traveling with two earthbound ponies. I studiously ignored that part of me. For now, the song was helping me keep my legs working. As we rounded a steep hill, Velvet Remedy and Calamity's song reached an abrupt end.
I have no idea yet what to do for the bridge.
Velvet admitted a little sheepishly.
But the chorus is strong?
Calamity agreed, having taken a real shine to the project. Spreading his wings, he swooped up to land on a tall rock jutting from the hilltop, then crouched down.
Got something ahead.
He glided back down to us.
There's a batch of ponies clustered around a heap of vehicles all mashed together.
Calamity checked the load in his battle saddle.
They look like they could be raiders.
Look like.
I asked warningly. Calamity paused, blushing.
Yeah, well, better to approach cautiously. Safer rather than sorrier and all that. Fortunately, they ain't seen us yet, so...
You sure about that, Pony?
Said a gravelly
Oh,
voice from the
damn!
air above us. The armored griffin thudded down in front of us in a battle stance. Talons sharp as razors, a jagged scar running up her beak and across where her left eye had once been, and a tri-barreled magical energy shotgun in a quick-draw holster
Oh
under her
god,
breast.
it's Big Boss!
The battle-scarred griffin was named God, and we were her guests. I must admit I found her impressive. God marched us up the tracks
Really?
towards what my pip-buck labeled the Junction R7. Calamity's Heap O vehicles turned out to be an old rusted train and a stack of wagons forming a barricade over the tracks. The train cars were strange. I had never seen cattle cars before. The wheels on the engine were missing. From the cactus vines growing over much of it, Junction 7 hadn't seen moving traffic for at least a decade.
I've seen the inside of cattle cars because, you know, I'm very interested in like history of wars, be they antiquity, medieval, or like the world wars. You know, you can't learn about the world wars without the Holocaust, so you know, the people I've seen the inside cattle cars, that's what I'm saying. Are these any different? Because this opens up so many questions that were kind of in the back of my head, but I never really thought of. What's the status of cows in pre-war Equestria? Like, we know they're sapient. I actually learned the difference between sentient and sapient recently. And so they're sapient, you know, speeds, I assume higher mathematics. They got invited to a wedding. So, you know, they're at least friendly and intelligent and such, like humans and ponies. What are these cattle cars like? Are they just those horribly over-cramped, dark, bad things? Like, what was going on? Because the thing is, Lil Pip says, I've never seen cattle cars before. But she was on a train with I guess guest cars, because there were apparently seats, and I think there were tables. Regardless, there were seats, so normal passenger cars. By saying I've never seen cattle cars before, that implies difference. That's just the fact that there is difference does not imply good things. It could be. I mean, maybe cows have different needs than ponies do, but I can't really see what those needs would be. I mean, you need a chair. Chairs are pretty much all the same. Seats and stuff. So, I don't know. Just implying that there's a difference. No, saying there is a difference implies something bad. It could be bad. It implies that it doesn't have to be bad, but it implies it, and I don't like that because I've seen cattle cars, and putting sentient beings cramped in those things is horrible. Oh no, I don't know. Maybe. Oh, tell me what you think, K-Cat. I just got. Oh.
Ponies had converted the trapped train into a guard outpost. Rusty sheet metal formed sheltered huts jutting out from the wagon stack. From the stench of manure, the old switch house on the opposite side was their outhouse. Velvet Remedy lifted a hoof to her nose, eyes watering. Calamity noticed me eyeing the cattle cars.
I've heard stories of slavers using those to transport slaves long distances over the rails,
he muttered, adding after a moment's thought.
Never seen one with my own eyes, though.
Taking in the size of the cattle cars.
It's my grandpa. He needed something from the other room.
Stories of slavers using those to transport slaves long distances over the rails,
he muttered, adding after a moment's thought.
Never seen one with my own eyes, though.
Taking in the size of the cattle cars, then the number of them on the train, it struck me. That's a lot of slaves. On the other hoof, these ponies were certainly not using them for the buying and selling of ponies. They were dressed in the same sort of makeshift armor that I had taken from the raiders, but a closer look revealed that several of them carried magical energy weapons of one sort or another. And as we neared, most of those weapons were swiftly pointed at us. My ears flattened as I remembered one of the train ponies vaporized, leaving only glowing pink ash behind. It occurred to me only now that I had seen the same effect on my first day outside. The Watcher-controlled Spritebot had used a similar weapon on the Bloat Sprite, so maybe the Spritebots weren't entirely Earth Pony engineering after all. Despite our situation, my thoughts jumped track. What did Watcher say about Bloat Sprites? When you mix Parasprites and Taint, which is magical radiation, right? Or is it something different?
Oi!
God called out.
Let him pass. Me and these little ponies are gonna have a talk.
Hooves raised in greeting. Several ponies echoed, responding, "Poise," before returning to what they had been doing before. One brown mare with a missing leg was using her peg to jam spark batteries into the array for a mounted multi-barrel magical energy cannon.
Sounds awesome!
A pink unicorn pony had several barrels stripped out of the cannon and was cleaning them with his horn. He moved slowly, like his motor skills were impaired, but his telekinetic horn work was fluid and precise. I could see old scars, dozens at least, possibly over 100, all down his back and legs. He'd been whipped to the edge of death, many times. I looked to my companions.
Again, that's not Just really. We discussed this so long. You know why it bothers me about.
Calamity had slowed down, giving the mounted weapon a curious eye. Velvet Remedy was more concerned, if not downright appalled, at the condition of some of the ponies. A half-starved foal trotted out of a shadowed alcove of rusty metal, carrying a canteen around his neck, which he offered to each of the half-dozen ponies I could spot. Velvet leaned close, whinnying nervously.
What are we getting into?
With talon and wing,
I don't know.
God directed us into the single-passenger car
Is
on the
it
train,
God or God?
nestled up against the crippled engine. From the reek of dander inside, this was clearly the house of God. Or, at least, her office.
Nice.
Close up the door.
Nice.
She ordered a blue-coated earth pony as she stepped inside behind us. The door swung shut with a metallic squeal, and I could hear braces thudding into place. We were locked in with the Griffin. Ironically, in better circumstances, I realized this would be a big tactical mistake for the Griffin. 3 against 1, and at least 2 of us could handle ourselves in combat. It was odd, and somewhat uncomfortable to think of myself as some pony who could face a fight with confidence. Not for the first time
Oh,
I had
I know
to
this
wonder
music.
if the wasteland was changing me for the better, or just changing me. Right now, however, with my levitation magic at its most feeble, we were probably hosed if this came to blows and guns. It was the same reasoning that had prompted me to accept God's invitation in the first place. Things hadn't changed. The room was spartanly furnished, save for the desk with a glowing terminal and a tattered black flag on the wall, showing wicked talons coming out of darkness. God
Get
strutted
Dominions
around
4.
behind the desk, placed her talons on it, and faced us. I shook my head, trying to clear the webs of too little sleep, when I caught myself musing that she'd look really attractive if she was a little closer to my age and, a pony.
First things first.
God
Oh,
glowered
don't
at
let
the
that
three of
stop
us.
you, little
Who are
Pip.
you ponies? And who do you work for?
Calamity bristled.
I could ask you the same thing.
Mind your manners, Pegasus. You're in our territory and in my home. I ask, you answer.
I put a steadying hoof on Calamity's flank, indicating that this was okay. Stepping forward,
I'm Little Pip. This is Calamity and Velvet Remedy. We're just passing through.
we also had an increasingly desperate need for a place to sleep, but I wasn't going to reveal that, much less suggest we sleep anywhere near here.
Did Mr. Topaz give you permission to cross our territory?
Something made me suspect a trick question, but before I could formulate a strategic response, Velvet Remedy asked.
Who's Mr. Topaz?
The grizzled griffin leaned over the desk and locked Velvet Remedy with her one good eye.
Say again.
She stared at Velvet appraisingly. Velvet Remedy stood up straight.
You asked us about Mr. Topaz, some pony I've never heard of before. I asked you who that was. What's so difficult about that?
I had to force myself not to face off. However, God apparently saw something in Velvet that impressed on her that the unicorn was sincere. The griffin sat back.
You really don't know, do you?
A smile slowly crossed her beak, her scar turning it into something unpleasant.
Well, isn't that interesting?
She tapped her talon tips together as she considered us.
Well,
Velvet Remedy prompted. God leaned back, smiling quite a lot now.
Mr. Topaz is the lord and master of Shattered Hoof, and all territories adjacent.
Calamity nickered.
I call horse apples. This ain't anywhere near Shattered Hoof Ridge.
God rolled her eyes.
No, but you are less than a half-hour's flight from Shattered Hoof, the rock-breaking compound, which was named after Shattered Hoof the battle.
Rock breaking compound.
God face-winged.
Really? Surely you understand rock-breaking.
She stared out at uncomprehending faces, then sighed.
Sometimes rocks have gems in them, unless you've got a unicorn who can tell you which ones do and which ones don't. You have to break them open to see what's inside. For crying out loud. You had to have passed at least one of the rock farms in order to get here.
Velvet Remedy raised an eyebrow, confused.
how do you farm rocks?
Ugh, easy. You pick a plot of land where rocks are shown a higher likelihood of hiding gems, and you farm them.
We were clearly not impressing the griffin with our ignorance. Waving a talon,
Some ponies even used to rotate the rocks around from one field to the other to help improve the chances of gems.
That doesn't make any sense.
I blurted, interrupting. It wasn't like the gems grew in the rocks like seeds, after all. My mind twinged. Calamity only made it worse by suggesting,
I think it's a tradition.
Well, it's a stupid tradition.
I argued back.
These are rocks. Gems aren't magical. A rock is not going to
Hey,
be any
Little
more
Pip.
likely to have gems.
Lil Pip, don't say that. Because frankly, how the fuck do that many gems end up in rocks anyways, and where do gems come from? Because that's kind of a finite resource-ish, kind of. It's weird. I don't know the specifics, but I'm willing to believe that magic is involved. And if Earth ponies, who do field rotations with these rocks increase the likelihood of gems, well then that's fucking magic.
In it if you give the rock loving care or extra sunlight or better dirt to sit on.
Well, gems could be magical. I mean, how many magical artifacts use gems? You need gems to build magical energy weapons. They use them to focus and amplify the energies.
I stared. First, that was way more technical expertise on anything related to the arcane sciences than I ever expected from Calamity. Second, it had never actually occurred to me that gems might be magical. God sat in front of us, impatiently waiting. After a silent pause, I turned back to her.
I think we're done now. Please, continue.
God had a job for us, promised bottle caps and safe passage in return. Naturally, we had some questions, starting with,
Why us?
Because you ponies aren't from around here. You got no loyalties to any of the people hereabouts. And that makes you free to operate where I can't. Do things a member of Mr. Topaz's employ couldn't get away with.
She gave us a narrow look.
You getting me?
I nodded slowly.
You want us to do something you can't do without being disloyal to Mr. Topaz.
But isn't it still disloyal to hire somebody else to do your dirty work?
Velvet Remedy questioned. God glowered.
Now look here, I have only 2 loyalties. To the contract and to bottle caps. And in that order.
She leaned back, looking over her shoulder at the flag behind her.
My old crew learned that when they decided to take up Red Eye's offer and turn over the caravan we were hired to protect to Red Eye's slavers.
She turned back to us.
Talons don't break contracts, not even for barrels of caps. They learned that the hard way when I shot him in the back.
Her smile turned to grim.
It was a point of honor.
Shooting your friends in the back didn't sound like any code of honor I could understand. Still, God's words opened up a whole flood of new questions from us, stampeding one after another. God was gracious enough, though, for a little while, to answer.
Red Eye, that guy on the Sprite Bots? He runs the slavers?
Yes, ironic, isn't it? He preaches all that horse shit about peace and unity and building a better tomorrow. And he's been building it on the backs of hundreds of slaves. I can't understand how so many of you ponies buy into that hypocritical bullshit.
But Griffins don't?
Hell no. He couldn't pay enough to make me bite into his poisoned apple.
God grimaced, adding,
Not that he's offering. No unity for Griffins. We're just hired wings to him.
And the Griffins will work for him?
Yes.
God seemed to take that as either offensive or stupid, or possibly offensively stupid.
Towns will work for whoever pays. Slavers, raiders, good little townsfolk, caravans. Whoever's got the caps. We don't play politics, and we don't take sides. Unless, of course, it's in the contract. That's been the Griffin way for over 200 years. Red Eye, he gets that. And unlike some folk, he has no reservations about strengthening his forces with our kind.
Talons?
The Talons.
God boasted, looking back up at the flag.
Have been the best mercs in the Equestrian wasteland since before Equestria was a wasteland.
She thumped her armor proudly.
Can't hire yourself any better.
Why does...
But God had finally reached the end of her conversational composure.
Enough! I'm not your fucking teacher. I'm the one who's hiring you to perform a service. Get it done right. You could ask me everything you want to as I lead you safely out of here.
I looked to my companions. The chore itself shouldn't be too hard. It was, after all, right in my skill set. I'd barely need the magic I barely had. God clicked her talons together again.
Oh, one last thing.
Why did I know I wasn't going to like this?
What?
Collateral.
God smiled, a cold and friendless smile.
Not that I don't trust you, but I need to make sure you don't plan to march in there and tell Deadeyes all about our little arrangement. So, one of you is staying behind with me.
Oh, hell no.
Calamity all but growled.
Or maybe instead,
I suggested reasonably.
you could sit on my horn and spin.
God actually smirked at that. She opened her talons in a wave.
If you decide you don't want the job, you're free to go. I'll just have the ponies outside open up the door and tell them you're no longer under my protection.
She raised an eyebrow, pretending to give us time to mull over the non-choice.
You do the job. This is the way you do it.
Okay, not so attractive. I glared at the griffin.
Fine, you can have me
I winced a moment later and clarified.
as your prisoner.
God contemplated that for less than a moment.
No,
A razor-sharp talon jabbed the air in Velvet Remedy's direction.
Knew it.
she will stay.
My mind echoed Calamity's words.
Oh, hell no.
I opened my mouth, expecting the stream of profanity working its way to my tongue would shock even a raider. But Velvet Remedy preempted me.
Agreed.
What?
I turned towards her, aghast. Velvet merely nodded.
There are ponies here that I might be able to tend to, and your special skills are needed for this undertaking.
Wait,
God interrupted.
tend to? Don't tell me you're another preacher.
Velvet Remedy fixed the griffin with a stare of her own.
Maybe you should have asked more about me before insisting that I stay here with you.
Calamity passed me the binoculars and crouched back down behind a formation of boulders lining the hilltop. I took them and looked down into a small, unnatural valley surrounded by ridges. Several rows of tracks cut through the valley, ending at the iron-gated mouth of a fortress. Walls of concrete and barred windows rose up from the ground surrounding a courtyard, most of which was barely visible through a roof of razor wire, although there was a gaping hole in the razor wire towards one side that some pony on a better day could drop boxcars through. The broken remains of a road, cut up by multiple concrete barriers, terminated at a second gate of thick metal beneath the watch of a guard tower. I could see a scarce few ponies walking between it and the towers. Shattered Hoof Re-Educational Stockyard.
Oh, God.
Reforming a baron's morality through hard work and loving care.
Woo, this ain't good.
We had been warned that the surrounding valley had been mined. The road would be a killing zone, and even if I went in alone using the stealth buck, I doubted I would be able to get through that door. It looked like it only opened from the inside. If we were going to sneak in, there was only one way to go. I looked at Calamity and saw that he had come to the same conclusion.
I figure we'll wait till it gets a bit darker, then I'll fly you in.
I nodded.
Are you sure your wing's up for it?
Calamity stretched out his bandaged wing and gave it a few flaps.
Yep, good to go. Take more a bullet to get me out of the sky.
He quickly added.
When I'm not pulling an apple cart, at least.
A shadow passed over his expression as he looked at his bandaged wing. Flying in still had risk, a dark, pony-shaped blotch against the sky. Some pony might spot that, particularly if they're on the lookout for griffins. I didn't want to risk Calamity getting shot again, and the stealth buck couldn't conceal both of us. I mulled over the problem until an idea struck me. It could help, but I hated asking Calamity to fly on his wounded wing, even if he had just suggested it.
Calamity, remember those mattresses back at the grocery?
An hour later, with the clouded sky darkening, Calamity gently circled down towards the huge hole in the razor wire above the rock-breaking yard.
Ew.
His forelegs wrapped around me, and I, in turn, strained my telekinesis to keep the cover sheet from one of the Raider outpost mattresses flying along beneath us. The mottled, mostly gray color of the rectangle camouflaged our shapes against the sky. Shattered Hoof had become the home of escaped slaves, many from the train that had been ambushed at Junction R7, who had turned to a life of raiding the local farms. The very idea made my stomach tighten. Having fought to save several captured ponies, risked my life and those of my friends, not to mention the lives of innocent train ponies to give them freedom, the mere idea that some former slaves would turn to the most vile sorts of barbarism made my skin want to tear itself off. Their leader was a pony named Deadeyes, who spoke for a supposedly higher pony whom no one but Deadeyes had ever seen, Mr. Topaz. It was for Mr. Topaz that Deadeyes organized raiding parties out of Shattered Hoof and kept the rock-breaking yards in operation. Inside that fortress, God had told us, secure in Deadeye's office was a safe. In the safe was a ledger. God wanted it. She didn't say why. Honestly, I had my own reasons for wanting to take a look at that.
Yeah.
Deftly, Calamity arrowed through the torn section of razor wire and landed us gently at one edge of the yard.
You see?
He whispered cockily.
Nothing to it.
Not more than a heartbeat later,
You annoying
two Shattered
little
Hoof
bastard.
raiders trotted by. Calamity and I backed into the shadows, and I pulled the mattress cover over us. We held our breaths.
Did you hear something?
I heard one ask the other.
Yeah, my stomach. Growling.
They seemed to pause there for several long seconds.
I hit the wrong pause button. Oops. But, yeah. So So we got a few minutes, but like I said, 30 minutes is as far as I could go without the editing time and to become just ridiculous, because the longer the video, the longer the damn edit takes. So, not too many issues were brought up. I mean, re-education, that's bad. Considering that apparently it's Raiders, that's what I get. Raiders with maybe the sign's old, like it's from during the war, or before the war. Maybe. But that just makes it worse for pre-war Equestria. Re-education. It's bad sounding. But, the biggest issue I had was with the Cal cars, because I don't know what's going on there. Could be bad. Might be alright. I don't think it's going to be good. But, yeah. Not too much to talk about, but the Talons they're interesting. Was there a mercenary group like that in Fallout 3? It's been a while. I think there was. But as for Lil Pip saying that a point of honor to shoot your friends, they weren't her friends. They were her co-workers. And they betrayed Okay, that's the thing. It says that it betrayed the caravan to Red Eye Slayers. Was the caravan actually taken? Or did she kill them all and still protect the caravan because, it's a point of honor? They don't break their fucking contracts. They were hired to protect the caravan and the ponies. So even if they were taken, did they bust them out? Because, again, it's a point of fucking honor. You do the contract. And if the contract was to protect those ponies who were taken as slaves, do you go get them back? If that's what happened. If the caravan was taken and she didn't just kill them all when she found out and, there's a story there. I want to know it. Also, Red Eye's a fucking bastard. I knew that going in here. Again, it's impossible not to get something spoiled. But, fuck him. Trying to think, it really depends on what kind of slavery, because there's multiple kinds of slavery. In Central Africa, they had a form of slavery where it's obvious. It's the classical South American plantation idea of slavery. They're whips, apparently, and, slave and all that stuff. So it's obviously that kind of slavery. But there were multiple types. In Central Africa, a form of slavery was you took the slave basically into your family. They ate dinner with you. They worked with you. They even slept in the same house as you. They were still slaves. And they typically got the crappy jobs. But you didn't beat them or whip them or anything. And you got to know them. I mean, they ate with you and stuff. So there's that. There's thraldom, which is... It's going to sound bad, but my favorite. Which is... well, again, there's multiple types of thraldom. That's the thing. The idea of what slavery is kind of changes on culture and time period. But there's one where again, because there's so many different types of even just one type of slavery, like thraldom, that I could say something, someone else could say, no, it's not. In the end, we're both right. It's just we're talking about different time periods and ideas. But, again, it's weird. Slavery is a weird topic, because I know there all the multiple types of slavery. But again, this is clearly the modern American idea of slavery with the bad stuff. And again, if treated more like indentured servitude, it's not that bad. It's still bad, but it's not that bad. If they have... Okay, again, thraldom. In, I forget the age, but Dark Age Scandinavia, there were rules. Okay? There were actual rules to how you treated your slave. Like, you couldn't just whip them for no reason like you could in Southeast America. during plantation slaves. You couldn't do that. You wouldn't get away with that. And another thing is the type of thraldom I learned about when I was researching Scandinavian lore was the child born of a thrall is not a thrall. They're a free member of the clan, tribe, whatever. So again, that was interesting, and that's what kind of makes it my favorite, because the slaves still had basic rights, and the children weren't slaves themselves. Again, traditions and stuff change, so if you learned a different type of thraldom, we're actually just talking about two different types from two different ages. But, so, again, there are forms of it that aren't that bad and arguably can work better than... Because if you just whip them, you can't use them to work. You breed resentment. I mean, at least if thraldom, you kind of give them some rights. And considering where this takes place, oh, hey, we're still slaves, but we're better off than those guys way over there. Let's stay here. It's psychology. It's just not sustainable the way it's being done. I'm not talking sense. I feel like I'm not making sense when I talk. And it's because I have a lot to say about a lot of different topics. Like I said, I saw Star Wars, it's on my brain. The Jungle Book is on my brain. This is on my brain. So it's all kind of condensing. I want to talk about all these different things. And when I try to focus on just one topic, I feel like I'm not making sense now. But I gotta end this video before it hits 40 minutes, because otherwise this will never get out. So, goodbye. We'll finish this up next time. We'll probably just, we'll do the last few minutes, then we'll do the last few minutes, then we'll make the rest of the video just about what I think is going on and what's going to happen. So, see you later.